يا هلا 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 حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا يا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا يا هلا ويا هلا ويا
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the program. It's a Wednesday morning. Great to be with you and a great lineup as always. The big question on all of South Africa's minds, and I guess the rest of the world, is he going or not? Of course, we are at a political crossroads here in South Africa and we're waiting with bated breath. So we'll be watching our screens and listening to our radios very, very closely to hear whether Zuma has finally decided to go or not. And well, all I can say is we're waiting. So from that very ridiculous situation, we're going into a very sublime space, and that is gardening, landscape and gardening. We're also going to be looking at Play Africa and Kinesiology. So as you can see, we've got a wonderful roundup for you this morning. We do hope you'll keep us company. And of course, as always, the lines will be open, so call in and keep us company. So gardening, why is it important? Very especially when we are in turbulent times. I think the only pleasure and respite you can get is by going out into a green space and just relaxing and unwinding. And the lady in studio with me is the wife of environmentalist Tim Neary. She too is in the space of a clean, beautiful and calming environment, and that is gardening. Her name is Claire Neary and she's going to talk gardening with us this morning. Morning, Claire, welcome to the program.
Good morning. Thank you for having us.
I'm so glad to have you here, you know, with all of this turmoil and anxiety and uncertainty going on around us. We become very toxic, we become very uptight, and we need people like you and Tim and people that are working with and in spaces of the earth to ground us and to appreciate what we have around us. Despite all the political turmoil, we are blessed. We're living in a beautiful country.
With beautiful weather and beautiful surroundings. Each day I look at everything that we're surrounded with and I say thank you. What a beautiful job I have to get up early in the morning, to work into the first garden that I have, that I'm doing, and I appreciate a beautiful flower.
Claire, how did you off air, you were telling me that you manage and maintain 50 gardens, including your own. And I'm wondering, how did this come about? Nothing to do with Tim Neary, your husband, the environmentalist?
No. I was brought up as a farmer's daughter in the Eastern Cape, and even as a young child, I used to go and meander through my mom's beautiful garden. She had a lovely garden filled with roses. She had come from England and she wanted to have this beautiful, soft English garden. We had, I don't know, I had the run of the farm. I had a beautiful garden and I had a playroom that Mom had built specially for me as the youngest child because I was on my own, right in, and she included a little garden behind it for me to play in or to work in. And I used to go up to the vegetable allotment, whatever you want to call it now, with our gardener, and I'd spend hours with him, hauling carrots out, shaking the soil off and eating it. So for me, it probably was instilled when I was young, and I found it good exercise. And until a few years ago, I didn't even bother going to gym because I felt as though I had done enough gardening, bending, stretching, doing all the things that you do in a garden when you're working.
To me, gardening sounds like hard work, real back-breaking hard work. And if that's the mindset that people kind of embrace and then want to go into gardening, it ain't going to work, is it?
No, you must go with the fact that gardening is fun. Breaking soil can be fun. Yes, there are easier ways to break bad soil. We had very bad soil. I took off all the topsoil in our garden, and in sheer desperation went and hired a a hammer drill. Literally, we actually moved all the soil because it was 1.5 meters down, and I hired something and I just broke up all the soil, and we took it away and broke off the next layer, prepared it, and then planted my lawn. And it was purely because I took a job that was backbreaking and made it easier by using a piece of tool or a tool that is available. You don't have to buy it, you can hire it. And hired it for a day, paid my 250 Rand, and it made our lives pleasurable.
You mentioned the soft English gardens, and I think nothing can rival those gardens. We absolutely adore the English gardens and, of course, the rose gardens. But can they and do they work in our environment?
They can and do, provided you prepare your soil. After all, if you are building a house, you don't skimp on your foundations. And the foundation of a garden is actually the soil. So if you prepare your soils well, double digging, nobody likes doing. It's where you go down 2 spade lengths, put it to one side. As you go, you put in the good soil, the top soil at the bottom, and you turn in the worst soil, the underground soil, to the top. So you constantly moving it. Then you put in your compost and you layer it back as it came out. And by making it so nutritious on the top, probably 700 mils, you are then giving your plant a good start to life, because after that your trees can push their roots right down through that to the water. We are very fortunate, especially in our high-veld areas. We have got water fairly close for our trees to actually push through to. So we don't need to baby them as much as we all think we do. And there are plants that don't need as much water, and there are ways to garden where you don't need to overwater.
But coming back to the English gardens, we know that the UK, that part of the world, has got a very high rainfall. They're in a high rainfall area, and that is why their gardens are green throughout the year. Beautifully green, and the most amazing gardens and rose gardens. That doesn't work necessarily for us here. So how can we be water-wise and still have a beautiful garden?
Water-wise plants are often not necessarily, they have areas in England which are very, very, very dry. They use sedums, they use plants that don't need so much water. It's also about, again, preparing your soil so that it becomes water retentive. They also, and something that we all need to consider, and it's just experience. Yes, I qualified, but I don't go back. I was fortunate that I had a teacher who was absolutely fantastic.
Qualified as a
He was a qualified horticulturalist, and he worked at Kew. So he really, really had an incredible knowledge to pass on to us. And he taught me so much in the 8 years that I was actually studying with him that I cannot thank him enough for
8 years?
8 years. Because I was studying part-time and I did both horticulture and landscaping, and in between I did other courses as well, so that I could... It's a fascinating hobby for someone who wants to get into it, because you never learn everything. There's always something new to learn. There's always something new to embrace. There's always something new to try. And, oh, that didn't work in my garden. Oops! And we start again.
So, Claire, we all love gardens. We all love green spaces. We know how tranquil it makes us feel. But a lot of us just kind of grass out the entire area because we don't know how. What is your advice? And I know that you do dabble or have dabbled in landscaping. What's the different areas of gardening? It's not just gardening, finish and claw.
No.
So talk to us about the different sciences around gardening. What do we need to understand if we want to start up and start establishing a beautiful, professionally looking garden?
Knowledge. Don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to have people, don't be afraid to try. but it's to get people who really do know what they are doing. Gardening is the science. I always like it as a scientific art. And a friend of mine once said to me, landscaping is creating a picture that is in the future. Because you have to have the vision to be able to plot something that is only going to mature in 4 or 5 years' time. And I'd never thought of it that way, because she's an artist. She actually draws, she's a graphic designer, and she actually enabled me to see my art in a totally different way, because I get frustrated because I can do the shapes and I can draw to a degree, but I haven't got that oomph, I haven't got the depth, I haven't got all of the things that you need for a true artist. And I suppose from a landscaping perspective, we've got Google now, which is a wonderful tool. Use it. Pinterest is a wonderful way to learn. They have ponds for dry gardens. We have found that by using cat litter in your veggie gardens and replacing it each 6 months, you actually have more water retention, building it up on the sides and making your veggie gardens small, your beds smaller. Pots, I use the brown cat litter over the top. Don't use pebbles, because pebbles heat up. Have you ever picked up a stone that's been in the sun?
Yes.
Now you've got that on top of a root. So that takes away, don't use pebbles. Use something that creates air around the roots. Just like humans need air and water, so do plants.
Now, for someone like myself who obviously I love gardens, I love beautiful gardens, I love just walking through the gardens and losing myself in the garden. However, it's for me way too, it's hard work. I can't get my head around it. Do I then contract with someone like you, Claire, and say, come in, try and make sense, and lay out, give me a picture of what this garden's going to look like in 5 years' time? Yes. You then plan the garden for me. You also decide what sort of plants are going to work best where in the area, in the garden. Because you've got shady areas, you've got full sunshine, etc., etc.,
You've also got different soil types, and different plants like different
things. In one garden?
In one garden.
Okay.
I have a garden where I have 4 soil types. And you've got acid soil and you've got alkaline soil. What plant is going to grow in that? Which plant is going to grow in this? You've got sandy soil. How are you going to build sandy soil up? You've got rocky soil. How are you going to break it down? You've got clay soil. How are you going to make it more loamy? So you've got all of that you've got to try and, I suppose, make into the ideal soil is loam, absolute loam. So you have a nice friable soil that the water will absorb in and not just run away, which it does in sand, and hold its nutrition.
Okay, we'll come back after the ad break. I'm talking to Claire Neary. She is a landscape gardener. She manages and maintains 50 gardens, so she's the go-to person if you're trying to establish a garden on your new property, or perhaps not so new property. Someone like myself, been living there for a while, but the garden just is not saying anything to you, is not speaking to you. And you do know that if you have it professionally landscaped, it's going to enhance not only your home, but the entire area. So she's the go-to person. Do stay with us when we come back. She's got her pots of tricks here. She's going to explain what all of these tools are, how they're to be used, and any other information you might have. So this is Let's Talk this Wednesday morning. We do hope you'll keep us company right up until 10 o'clock. We're talking gardening with Claire Neary, and she's got a whole host of tools here which she's going to explain to us. If you're one of those people that wanting to start up your own garden or want to get your hands dirty on the weekends, because as you've heard Claire says, it's the best exercise she's had. She didn't even have the need to go to a gym in all the time that she's been gardening. So we're going to ask Claire to unpack a box of tricks here and explain to us how you start out as a starter gardener. So just before we get there, Claire, for those people like myself who hates getting my hands dirty, and I have a sizable garden, would your advice be to contract with someone like you?
Yes.
So you come out, just tell me quickly, what is it that you do when I consult with someone like you? What is it that you're going to do for me?
We assess the site, we assess the soil, and we look at your plants and see what is to be kept, what needs to be cut back, what can be still used in your present garden. We then assess quantities of soil that you'd need or a general layout. I also ask you silly questions like what color, no different from when you're landscaping, when you're decorating the inside of your home, what the style of the house is, what your style is, what you envisage, colors that you like, colors that you dislike. Do you want fragrance? Do you want, I always think of the, personally, if I was living in a small garden or a garden on a hillside like yours, I would look at the influence of the Mughal gardens and the Persian gardens. They were just superb. They gardened in the most inhospitable areas, and yet they had these absolutely stunning, I suppose, courtyards with their porticos going all the way around. And they were cool. They were kept wonderfully cool because the air was, their houses were built in such a way that the air would flow through them.
True.
And would go over these little rills, because they had these beautiful little, I suppose, a rill, almost like a little gutter that their water flowed through. Possibly it was used for cleaning and all sorts of other things, but the romantic side of me says, no, that was on the outsides and it went down the sides and they wouldn't have had yucky things going through their courtyards.
Right.
And they had lemon trees and they had orange trees and they had jasmine. And
so right here in the heart of suburbia and in the heart of the CBD, so to speak, just or on the periphery of the CBD, you could have the most amazing gardens. It doesn't matter what the size is.
Absolutely.
And someone like Claire would come in as a landscaper and a garden maintainer. You'd come in, you'd give me the design. I'd consult with you depending how much time you spend with me would determine what I'd pay for the consultation. And then it's up to me whether I'd want you to do the actual garden for me or I could do it slowly over time.
Absolutely.
Because it could be very costly.
yes.
All right.
You know, their ballpark figure is to draw between 15 and 20% of the value of your house should be what you spend on your garden.
Wow.
Now that's a bit difficult if you're buying something like an apartment, but you can still have something beautiful in an apartment. I forgot to bring it in. There's a pot that actually fits over a balcony.
Wow.
So you can pop it on your balcony and you can have all these gorgeous things in it, and you can have your herbs, you can have so many things in it, you can have hanging baskets.
Even if you have a home with a sizable garden, but you have balconies, you could still introduce that concept as well.
Absolutely, you don't, because on balconies, you have to check with your architect what weight those balconies can actually handle.
Okay.
So you do have this. There are other things that you wouldn't consider as an owner of a property if you haven't thought of drainages. All of those things are things that we think of. What is your water drainage? How are you going to get the water out? Is the water going to stand?
Okay, hold. I thought we've got a caller and then we're going to unpack all of this paraphernalia that you have here. To our caller, Assalamu alaikum, welcome to the program.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Abba Julie, and good morning to Mrs. Claire as well. Just a bit of a comment, and I would like Mrs. Claire to comment on what I say. With regards to sowing seeds, we find that people sometimes they don't have the knowledge to plant, like for example, coriander, brinjals, or very tiny seeds. They actually bury it instead of sowing them. like what I would do is use the small garden fork and scrape and then I scatter the seeds in the lines where I've actually made and just cover it again. It shouldn't be actually buried, as I say, deeply in the ground. It must be just lightly on the top. That's why sometimes we find that the things don't grow that we have planted. It actually is buried instead.
Thank you indeed. Thank you. That sounds like a seasoned gardener there.
Absolutely. What I will say is on the back of all seed packets, it actually tells you exactly how to plant them.
Okay.
So you don't have to even be literate because they come in pictures. So those of us who are too vain or too lazy or too anything else to go and fetch our glasses, yes, my arms are just long enough.
Believe it or not, we've got only 3 minutes to wrap up time, and there's still so many tools that we need to go through. But more importantly, you've got a sun hat on your lap, and I think that's a very important message you want to leave our viewers with today.
Absolutely. I'd really like everybody who works in a garden to consider using one of these hats. They are cancer based. And they have got a UV protection in it. You can see mine's actually quite dirty. You pop it in the washing machine, take it out, dry it flat. In this case, they're not all like that are made by these guys, but they are essential. And if you are very fair-skinned, I would suggest you use a very light scarf and cover the back of your neck while you are working as well, unless you have long flowing hair. Also, it keeps everything out of your way. If you've got a scarf and you just tie it behind you, and you keep your
so there's a
hair
lot
out.
of merit in the hijab.
Absolutely, absolutely.
What is all of this here? What would be the most important tools I need to have as a starter gardener?
Starter gardener, probably.
Or a gardener, period.
Probably these. That's a fertilizer.
Right.
Which on
just show it up to the camera.
That's a fertilizer there.
Yeah.
And on it, it has the 3 numbers. The 4th one in brackets is just the percentage per what's name, but you've got 19, 8, 16. Don't let it confuse you. Just remember it's brown, green, brown, and flowers.
Okay, great. And then you've got a couple of tools on your lap.
Then I have these are very special to me. My husband gave them to me. They are copper, if you can get hold of them. They are handmade in Austria. They have been specially sharpened on the edges so that you can cut. The theory behind it is that snails and slugs it confuses them. It does something with them, and they don't go to the area where you have dug with copper.
Oh wow! Okay.
Rather than, and it's got also it's very good for the soil. So there's all sorts of theories around these, and I can promise you they work.
Okay.
I love mine. That one's slightly bent, but great. A pair of secateurs. Essential in secateurs is to have them very, very sharp. You sharpen them with a piece of. If you don't have to go and buy a fancy sharpener, which I have at the bottom here somewhere, but you can just use a piece of very fine water paper and rub it gently on the blade, and it cleans it.
And last but not least, you've got an egg container on your lap. What is that all about? Why is that important for gardening?
Egg containers, you heard the lady, we bury them too deep. You just put your soil on, you put it through, you put your seeds on, and when this is mature, it's easy for you. It holds the water, so you don't get a loss of water. You can cut this up. I would actually use this for coriander in particular because they are such little fine seeds. There is a little gizmox that you can use that you can tap through so that you only get a seed per what's name. But you can also use a pair of tweezers.
Okay.
Most gardeners have got fairly thin, long fingers. Tubby fingers bruise. Girls make better seedling
gardeners.
Well, girls make better seedling movers because we're not as strong in our hands.
Right.
And then on this side, you could put your I'm trying to think, basil.
Okay.
Basil could scatter on this side because you can transplant basil fairly easily and pop it through. And then You just cut it up and pop it in the ground.
We've got
there you go.
And there was just so much more I needed to talk to you about companion gardening, etc., etc., and the difference between vegetable and flower gardening, but all of that for another time. Thank you so much for coming in, and let's hope people get in touch with you and start contracting with you. I certainly am going to be one of those people.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me.
That was Claire Neary talking to us gardening, and of course in these turbulent times, I think the one thing that you can rest assured is if you go out into a beautiful garden, your spirits will be uplifted. Stay with us still to come. We're going to talk kinesiology, and we're also going to talk Play Africa. From the science of gardening, we're now going to the science of the muscles, and we're going to be talking the psychology of energy. Pardon, frog in my throat. Morning, welcome to the show, and tell us what you're all about, please.
Good morning, thanks so much for having me. So I work with kinesiology and energy psychology as well. Let's start with kinesiology because you mentioned muscles. So kinesi is the study of the movement, so the movement of the muscles. And in kinesiology, we look at how the muscles are moving in relation to a certain situation, a certain intention, a certain goal, because we have blockages along the way that we pick up through sometimes just normal daily life, and then of course stress and traumas which haven't cleared. And if they haven't been released, they will stay in the body on a cellular level, and it will outplay itself through the muscles, and we will eventually see it either in the actual movement, in the structure, in the posture, in the chemical balance or imbalance, emotions. So we have a fight or flight situation, or possibly thoughts which become destructive, and there we have a mental issue brewing.
Okay, I did want to do this beautiful introduction with you simply because this is the third time you're in the studio with us, but I had a frog in my throat. So I do apologize for that. This is the lovely Helen Hansen. She's been with us twice before. The first time she was here talking about the biomat. The second time, the book that she's written on children, a parenting guide on how to raise children. I've always said there's never been a handbook to teach you how to be an effective parent. And lo and behold, Helen came out with it, and she's a woman of many talents. I just love having her here. And now she's in studio with us for the third time talking kinesiology, and she is a qualified kinesiologist, and that is why we are unpacking this issue with you today. So Helen, morning, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us, and sorry about the frog in my throat.
Has he gone now?
It is. Okay, so we talk the psychology of energy. I'm trying to understand perhaps the similarities or the differences between, or when would I consult with a kinesiologist? I'm thinking if I have back problem, would I go directly to my physiotherapist, or would I go to a chiropractor, or do I come to you? Who's going to give me the best results?
That is a beautiful question. Thank you. So I'm just going to backtrack, and it will lead us to the answer. In kinesiology, we work with the understanding that, first of all, the body has the wisdom to heal itself. We have that default setting. But kinesiology doesn't go and do the fixing. What happens is the kinesiologist is the facilitator to assist the client, and the client from an emotional, mental, and physical point of view, to get the body back to that point where it can actually either self-heal or be in the place of thriving and optimal health. So if we think of the human being as an equilateral triangle, so we've got one side representing the structural, our skeletal system. We've got the other side representing the chemical, so the blood, the nutrition, and everything that happens in the liquid state of us. And then we've got the third side, which is the psychological, a combination of the emotional and the mental. Now, if you think of that equilateral triangle, and one side goes even slightly out, it's going to affect the other sides, whether we like it or not. We know that from daily life. We're sitting in traffic, everything's fine, we've had a beautiful morning. Suddenly somebody pulls in front of us, the thoughts that we were thinking go out the window, and we might go into a fight or flight, or we go into a victim state. We have different emotions coming up, our body goes tense. All of this happens in a split second. So that's just an example to show us again how everything is so interconnected. So coming to your question now, with that understanding, you can go to a kinesiologist for literally absolutely anything, whether it is a sore back, a headache, depression, digestive issues, or your child's got learning problems, or you've got brain fog, insomnia. Yes.
Let's look at that connection with, you know, a child with learning problems. I can kind of understand all the other connections, you know, the physical and you know, the psychological connections.
Yes.
But a child with learning difficulties or concentration problems, for example.
So kinesiology has many modules which work specifically with balancing the different hemispheres of the brain. So we generally think of left and right, but there's many more. There's top and bottom, there's front and back, your conscious, subconscious, and all of them need to communicate in the correct and most optimal manner, crossing over, just like we've got a crossover from the one side of the brain to the other side of the body. When we're not having that crossover and things are going, as we say in kinesiology, homolateral, what happens is we end up stressing the body. We end up creating an imbalance in our organ systems. When that happens, our posture goes out. When that happens, again, we've got a misalignment with a different brain hemisphere. We've got a child sitting in class who is struggling to concentrate, really wants to, but can't understand why can I not get this information in and remember it like my friends can around me. And many times it's a simple brain-body balancing, and there are many techniques, some of which I can show you right now, which we can do.
I think you wanted me to stretch out my hand to you. Is that it? Is that
yes, we can start with that.
Or do you have something else in mind?
Now let's start with that so that we can see how the muscle reacts first of all, because that will be a good display of the information going from the brain to the muscle and how that happens so quickly. So if you put out your arm and I just test like this, and this is what I do in a session, I must just ask if you could uncross your legs, because we have got an electrical system going in the body, and if things are crossing over, we get different information. So thank you. Okay, so now I'm picking up a little movement here. Can you feel that? Okay, so now I'm going to go and I'm going to do this at the top of your arm. This is sending a message to your brain to tell the deltoid muscle that it mustn't act so strong now. It must weaken. Okay, and now feel what happens in your muscle there. It's very slight.
My arm feels a little heavy.
Okay, and what is it doing when I put this little pressure on?
It's moving.
Is it moving more than it was before?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, that's a good reaction because it means that the right signal is going there. Now, this is a strengthening motion. So now the brain is telling the muscle, you're strong again. And now when I put pressure on, what are you feeling?
My arm's still. Absolutely still.
Yes. And that's the beauty of how quickly messages travel through the body from the brain to the muscles, from the muscles to the brain and back. So it just makes us also become more aware of the power of our thoughts.
Okay, we need to take an ad break, but when we do come back, what I want to ask and explore a little further is the whole issue around the crossing of the legs. I can't sit, I'm not comfortable any other way. And a lot of the times I also kind of like crossing my arms, and people say you're shutting everyone else else out. But apart from that, let's talk about what it does to your body when you sit in that position for long stretches of time. Helen Hansen is my guest, third time lucky. She's here for the third time. Lovely having her here. She's a woman of many talents. This time around, she's talking to us kinesiology. So stay tuned. We do hope you're going to call in with all of your amazing questions, and she obviously will respond. We're talking to Helen Hansen. We're talking kinesiology, and if you have any questions or comments, we'd love to hear from you. Lines are open. Now, Helen, back to you. And the first question I put to you was the similarities or differences between the different modalities. It was possibly even occupational therapy, I think, falls into the same basket. We spoke physiotherapy, we spoke chiropractic, and we're talking about kinesiology. What about, and of course you said to me that I should uncross my legs. And I said to you, I'm not comfortable any other way. I also sometimes kind of cross my arms. What's that doing to my body, my concentration levels, and my general health and well-being? And then let's come back to you also after that response and talk about postnasal drips and a whole host more.
Yes, wonderful. So the crossing over, which we sometimes do naturally, it's a compensation. So it means that something somewhere needs a little bit of assistance with the structural support. And if we consciously make an effort to a little while later cross over the other way,
which I'm doing right now.
Yes, that's good. That kind of balances it out, but it still doesn't go to the root of the problem. And this is what kinesiology does with the muscle testing. It's not...
Is it unhealthy with the way I'm sitting? Is it going to be causing me any sort of harm long term?
That I would need to muscle test for. It's not a textbook answer.
Right.
And this is the beauty of kinesiology. You know, coming back to that first example that you gave, should I go to a chiropractor or should I go here or there? In kinesiology, we muscle test to find out exactly where the root cause is, and secondly, what will help you. Will kinesiology help you? Your body will tell through the muscle testing. Is it going to be more supported right now with chiropractic care or with possibly acupuncture or something else?
So unlike physiotherapy, where there's a lot of pressure on, the areas that you need to be healed or you need relief from, maybe lower backache or, headaches, etc., kinesiology just uses a very gentle touch or a tap.
Not always. There are a lot of pressure points and trigger release points as well that go quite deep. So kinesiology is a combination of the Chinese medicine with chiropractic care. So you get the best of the East and the West together. So there are many, again, modalities, techniques. We have hundreds of them in kinesiology to assist with balancing the muscles, releasing emotions, etc., etc. And if nothing is coming up that's going to be 100% supportive for you right now, then it takes us to what is going to be supportive. So in other words, you are never bound to keep on coming back to a kinesiologist. The intention of the kinesiologist is to find out what is the most optimal experience or therapy or treatment for the client right now.
Is it also possible, let's assume I suffer from acute back pain, that I visit a physiotherapist on a regular basis, but I also come to you for complementary therapy. Will it work? Will there be no clash of therapies which might ultimately do me some harm or just not any good?
Absolutely not, because again, going back to that understanding that the body knows how to heal itself. And what kinesiology does, it works with the different energy systems in the body. So you're working with your physical organ systems, you're working with your meridians as well as your outer magnetic field, your electrical current system in the body, and it's bringing a balance to that. And when we have balance, then we can self-heal, then we can live our purpose and live life to the fullest. So no, it will never take away from, it will only be able to add.
So let's assume I'm a relatively healthy person with a few, aches and pains and niggles here and there, like we all do present with from time to time. But I just want to kind of have a more holistic, just feel better about myself. What would you do for me? I come to you and I say, Helen, I have the odd backache, I have the odd headache. That's not what I've come to you for. I just want to be I want to maximize who I am and all the positives as far as my health is concerned.
Yes.
What would you do for me, Helen?
So it's so interesting that this has come up today, because yesterday I had a client, a regular client of mine, who's been with me for more than a year now, and he's worked through many aches and pains, etc., etc. And he still wanted to come just for a general tune-up and, as you say, a well-being.
Yes.
And he wasn't quite sure, well, I'm feeling okay, he said to me, so let's just see what comes up. So we muscle tested to find out the priority issue for him to work on. And for him, what came up yesterday was goals. So we sat and we muscle tested. There were 5 areas in his life that showed up that needed assistance for him to thrive and take his living and well-being to the next level. And with the muscle testing, we found out the exact words to put in the goal, the exact timing of when his actions should be done. So getting all the information from him so that he can now be on the right path and know with certainty that he is living optimally.
So is there a lot of talking that goes on in this therapy? A lot of questioning?
Sometimes yes, and sometimes no.
All right.
It really depends what comes up for the client. And I often get children coming to me, or even teenagers, and they're not interested in talking. And that's okay. And so what will come up for those people will be what they are able to handle and deal with right then. It will never bring up something that is going to be too difficult or too uncomfortable. I've had people come to me from India and they can't speak English, and we go through a whole session beautifully not having a common language, but the common language is the movement of the body.
So just let's assume it's the first time I come to you. Am I going to be sitting upright? Do you have a bed or a table that I lie down on? How do you start working on me and start uncovering or picking up that there's some sort of tension in at a certain point,
yes.
In my body, but that of course tells you more than, that would indicate to you that I'm having some emotional trauma or whatever else is going on with me. How do you start working with me?
Okay, so we start a session asking the client, is there something specific that they're wanting to cover? And then I also always ask the client, are you open to see any other information that would come through your body to say to you, it might be beneficial to look at working on something else today. So some people are very clear, they know what they want and this is what they want to do, then we work with that. And we set an intention for the session. That's very important. So it's not a broad, general overview. It's very, very specific. So let's say you've got a backache. What is the backache? How is it affecting your life? And what would you be able to do if you didn't have the backache? Well, I'd be able to go for a run on the beach, which I couldn't do anymore. So we've set that in the intention. I joyfully run on the beach every morning. I muscle test that. Oh, lots of weakness there. Now we can work with that and see where is the blockage in the body.
And do you prescribe specific exercises to strengthen those muscles?
If that comes up.
Okay.
So I would do then a 14 muscle assessment. So we go through pressing different points, either on the arms or on the legs or on the feet. And these are all linked with different systems in the body. So the bladder and the digestive system, the kidney, etc., etc. And from there, we're able to deduce what is the primary meridian that's showing up. Because often we'll have a pain in the shoulder, but actually the root is coming from the heel of the opposite foot.
And might even be bad footwear.
Exactly. Yes. So there's many different areas and avenues that one can look, but again, it's not the job of the kinesiologist to play any guesswork. We only work with the information that comes through the body. So we've got hundreds of different modalities. We then muscle test to see, right, which modality is going to serve in balancing the situation so that the client can run joyfully on the beach every morning.
And would you prescribe certain exercises for the client?
So sometimes that comes up in the modality. If it doesn't, at the end of the session, we test for what we call home support or homework. What is going to assist you now? And we test things like exercise, diet, supplements, breathing, other therapies, coming back to kinesiology, leisure. We go through the different areas of life.
And how many sessions would I have to come to you to kind of, get back on track with whatever my problem is?
So there we would muscle test again. And right at the end of the session, once you've been balanced completely, we ask, what is the integration period? In other words, how long is this that you've been receiving now? Your body's gone through a lot of transformation, and a lot of what happens in kinesiology.
In just one session?
In one session, a lot of subconscious work. So a lot of things that we are not consciously aware of. And this is really where the healing is, because this is where our patterns and habits sit. And then we find out at the end, the integration period, let's say it's 14 days. That means for the next 14 days, just let your body rest from kinesiology in terms of that intention. Then in 14 days, you can come and work on the same thing again. Or if you want to deviate slightly, which often happens because now there will have been movement and you will see, okay, I'm moving easier, so now the next layer of the onion has come out.
All right, Helen, what about someone who's suffering from a chronic disease or, one of lifestyle, someone who's a diabetic? They are on their regular meds, busy on a healthy diet, exercise, etc., but come to you as well. What are you going to offer them? What's kinesiology what's that added extra that they're going to get out of a better enhanced life?
Wonderful question. So I've had a few people in that situation.
I suppose cancers as well.
Yes. And I never ever suggest to anybody to go off their medication. Again, that's not the job of the kinesiologist. We come in to balance, help to assist to balance the different areas in the holistic being of that person. But that said, the pattern that I've noticed that's come up with those who have chronic issues is kinesiology provides the emotional support. So in a session, majority of the time for these people, what has been showing is emotional or mental imbalances, so more on the psychological side. And they found that when they are then balancing the emotional state and they're becoming more aware and in control of their thoughts and being more
That's the big thing, isn't
active,
it?
yes.
Controlling your thoughts. The power of positive thinking is a healing in itself. We've come to the end of the show, unfortunately. Does medical aid pay for these sessions?
We are still in the process of working that through with CETA. It is a long process, but apparently we are halfway through, so maybe in a year's time.
Fingers crossed.
Yes.
And in closing, your final words?
If you have a traumatic situation, you've got a child who's going into exams, you've got an interview, anything that's stressful, physical, mental, emotional, put your hand on your forehead and just let the balancing happen.
Wonderful having you in the studio. I wish we had more
Thank you.
time.
Yes.
Stay beautiful and can't wait to have you back in
Thank you
again.
so much.
That was the lovely Helen Hansen talking to us kinesiology. She's based in the Western Cape and she visits Johannesburg every so often, a couple of months. So every time she comes to Johannesburg, she knows she has a date with us here at ITV. Can't wait for her next visit. Still to come, we're going to talk Play Africa. What are they all about? How do they enhance communities? Well, to find out, you need to stay with us. And the third gorgeous woman in the studio this morning is the lovely Mpho Lebona. She's from an organization called Play Africa. Now, what on earth is Play Africa all about? Isn't play something that comes naturally to us? And if it doesn't, what are the implications, very especially to children? Let's hear more about Play Africa from Mpho. Morning, welcome to the program.
Good morning, thank you for having me.
Lovely to have you here, but before we get to Play Africa, who is Mpho Lebona and how did she become involved with Play Africa?
Well, first of all, the most important thing is Mpho Lebona is a mother.
Wow.
She's a mother, and I came to Play Africa when they came to visit a school that I was working for. It's a nursery school, and I went to the nursery school because there was a lack of everything. There was no stimulation for the children, nothing on the walls. It was just 4 walls, and kids were very bored. And I came in there to try and transform the nursery school, and that's how I got to meet Play Africa. They were doing their outreach, and I said, you know what, come and visit us and come and show us what you do. And from then on, I was just taken by all the programs that they had and they had to offer.
So I'm hearing what you're saying is that stimulation of all the 5 senses is absolutely integral to the raising of a well-rounded child.
Actually, stimulation of all the 7 senses.
7?
7
the
senses,
other 2 being?
because the other 2, the gastro, what you eat inside is part of your stimulation, and your movement as well. Not just the touching, but the movement as well is very essential. You know, when kids are playing outside on the swings, that's also a sense. It's a stimulation. That's how you find some kids like other foods and they don't like that, because it stimulates the taste buds and then it stimulates whatever is inside. So we have 7 senses, but we can go into that some other day.
If we have time, we will certainly cover it.
Yeah.
So you decided to do something about the nursery school that your child was at. You realized that there was just not enough stimulation. It's really a waste of, it was probably a waste of everybody's time for him and for the other kids to be there.
It was actually a nursery school that my sister was at, and my mom just was one of the board members there. And then she called me and said, hey, your sister's nursery school apparently is going down the drain. And we went there and saw that, you know,
how did you come across Play Africa, and what made you decide that this is probably the answer for all the impoverished areas perhaps, or also these makeshift nursery schools where just not enough stimulation is being introduced for the betterment of the children?
You know, when they actually came on Mandela Day in 2016. That's when I met Gretchen. They came and they brought all these programs, and it's just little things that enhance the power of play in a child. You know, parents sometimes think that you have to have all these fancy things and buy fancy toys and buy that and buy that in order to stimulate a child.
On that point, I often look around me and see the modern mothers of today. They have more toys and playthings in their homes than anything else. I mean, homes these days are over-littered with way too many toys, and you wonder if the children value anything at all.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you think about the way maybe you grew up, there weren't as many toys. And even when I was growing up, there weren't as many toys. You know, I would see boys outside. They would take a carton of milk, put the bottle caps on the side, and they're driving around. And that's the power of play. That's stimulate. And that's, you know, children really enjoy that. So you don't need much to play. You don't really have to go and buy fancy things. Use what you have. Recycle all the things that you have in the home in order to stimulate play with the children. And how many of these modern parents that we speak of actually know how to even operate the toys that they are buying for their children? So there isn't that relationship where mother and daughter, or mother and son, or father and daughter, father and son are actually engaging in play together. This is where we are different at Play Africa, because we engage the parent or the caregiver and the child. We encourage them to play together and ignite curiosity in them.
Every time a child plays with a certain toy or a piece of equipment, there should be some sort of stimulation and learning happening for the child.
Absolutely.
And what would be the added benefit is that if mom or dad is involved in that little play session, just imagine the amazing powerful interaction that's going on. Absolutely. And the quality time as well.
The quality time spent with the child. You know, I saw a video lately, I think it was last week, and I know I've seen it before, where the child says to the dad, "Hey dad, can you give me 50 rands? I mean, how much do you make an hour?" And the dad says, "No, I make 100 an hour. Dad, can you give me 50 rands?" And the dad got upset. "Why are you want 50 rand? You sure you want to buy something silly?" And yet the child was trying to save up money under the pillow so that they could spend that hour with dad. And eventually, when the father gave the child the money, and he said, "Oh, dad, look, I have now 100 rands. So can I please buy an hour of your time?" So, I mean, kids want
Absolutely
to engage with
precious.
us. You know, it made me cry because I'm such a softie, I guess, inside. But, you know, it shows how important it is. Just that time that you spend with your child, even 10 minutes can make a very, very big difference. I mean, when Play Africa came to the nursery school, I saw different children. There was a child that I had never heard speak before because they were just quiet. And even the educators said, I said, "Is there something that I'm not understanding with the child? Are they hard of hearing?" And they said, "No, they just don't speak." But Play Africa came 2 minutes later. The child, I could hear their voice, and they never stopped talking since then. You know, you could not say, "Hey, stop." Okay, no. They just didn't stop talking. So it's quite fantastic what Play can do.
Let's understand who and what is Play Africa all about? Why are they playing such an important role in the lives of so many impoverished communities? And of course, when we say impoverished communities, that's not where it stops.
Yeah.
We know that they're trying to reach out to as many South Africans as they possibly can, because you could be from a very affluent family and still not be stimulated.
Yes, absolutely. So we at Play Africa, actually, we don't have any boundaries in terms of who we serve. We like to, you know, put obviously our market, we focus on children 0 to 10, but
they are future leaders.
Really, we actually focus on children 0 to 100. Because when you come there, the child in you just pops up. You should see how many times I sit and play with Lego in the office. It's ridiculous. So Play Africa, we're a play-based learning organization. And, you know, we encourage parents and families, including children with different abilities, to come in and explore our space. And we're quite innovative, you know, in transforming the learning through play with children and families. So, and, you know, we serve from your lowest income communities to your highest income communities, because we are parents in general. Sometimes we don't know what to do, and you need that added support. You know, you need to know, what can I do with my child now? And, you know, the things, the programs and things that we have in our museum, they are so stimulating for the children, and they learn so much from just one little thing. And right now we are exhibiting something called Farm to Market. Most of our children don't know where their fruits and vegetables actually come from. They see them at the shop, and that's where it comes from. Where it grows, how it grows, the whole process, they're not really aware of that. And that's something that we do, you know. And I think my most important role for me at Play Africa is being a play facilitator. You know,
is that what you call yourself?
Yes, I call myself a play facilitator.
Precious.
And, you know, it brings me such joy to actually sit and watch a parent, just after a few minutes of letting them be comfortable, how they actually start engaging. And sometimes parents want to take over the play, which is also great, which tells me that, you know what, everybody has it within them to play. You know, we play with our phones.
We take play for granted.
We do.
Not realizing just how much of learning and connectivity and quality time, you know, is playing out between the people that are involved in that activity. So in a situation where play facilitators like yourself engage with the children, lots is happening, but do you actually pass all of that? And I don't think it's rocket science stuff. It's simple, easy to understand, and to then pass down and interact with your children. Is it, you know, do you have sessions with parents as well to say, this is how you should be interacting with this age group or that age group, and these are the pieces of equipment you need? Because also right at the beginning of the interview, you did indicate that you don't need expensive toys and expensive equipment to make that play meaningful, eventful, and valuable.
So we haven't had those workshops just for parents only, because, you know, it's like if I give you a pamphlet now and I say, okay, go and do this at home. Sometimes it's not as easy as when you are there with the child and you're actually engaging and you're showing them what to do. So that's why we bring the parent and the child together in the same space, so that they can see the reaction. And we're also there to be hands-on, and the parent can say, okay, no, they don't like this. And then we can say, okay, let's try this. So, you know, if you take something at home and the child doesn't react to it the way you would like them to, then they feel like, oh, this doesn't work for me. But when we are there, we're there to help and facilitate and say, okay, this, if it doesn't work like this for this child, it might work like this. Let's try different ways.
Okay,
that
we're going to take an ad break. When we come back, let's hear how you connect with parents, how you connect with schools and communities, and what more can I do as a parent to truly enhance my experience with my children. Play Africa is here talking to us about the therapy they've introduced all around South Africa. I understand that they play museums all around the world, and this is where this idea was picked up and brought to South Africa by Gretchen Prangley, I think it is?
Gretchen Wilson Prangley.
Gretchen Wilson Prangley. She's brought this amazing concept to South Africa. I'm not sure if they've sent us any slides and pictures for us to see as we speak to my lovely guest, but if they haven't managed to send us the pictures, we'll ask her to describe all the amazing pieces of equipment and paraphernalia they have, and also to talk to us about the Play Africa Museum. I've seen pictures of it and it is absolutely mind-blowing. Never mind the children, you and I can have a great day out at the museum. So stay with us. We're talking Play Africa museums. They're big all around the world. They have big centers not only in the United States but in Europe as well. And Gretchen decided to bring the concept to South Africa because she believes it's something that would work well in our communities, and we can start putting back and raising really well-grounded children. So Mpho, when you are exposed to Play Africa a day at the museum or when you visit the schools, what do you believe you're leaving those children with?
Yeah, I think it's not just the children, but I believe we are leaving the family with something. They have that shared experience, and I mean the feedback that we get from parents as well. You know, they say, you know, I didn't know that my child could do this. I didn't know that my child could do that. And I think the other important thing that we have at Play Africa is that we have a parent support, where we support parents in different ways. When we go to most of our communities, especially outside of the CBD, we sometimes go with a social worker who would be able to engage with parents, because sometimes there's different reasons why parents are unable to connect with their children. There's so much that's happening outside that, you know, that just weighs them down. Work issues, financial issues, so exhaustion. And I think we all have that at some point in our lives. And when you're exhausted, you just don't want to do anything. And we realize how hard, you know, it is for some of our parents. So we have that parent support and the social worker that can refer them and, you know, assist them with certain things. Obviously, our support is quite limited, but we leave them with resources of, you know, the games that we play with them, and say, okay, this is how you can play with your child at home. And say, you don't have what Play Africa has right now. We can't leave our exhibits. Obviously, we can't give them to one parent or the other. But we give them ideas and we show them how they can play, you know, using the same things at home.
You don't have to be spending lots of money
no.
to get, you know, expensive toys.
Yeah.
You can just become very innovative and put together something.
Yes.
And the whole idea is to awaken the child in you as the parent, yes, and connect with your child all over again and have some really fun quality time with your child.
That's right. And you know, when you make things at home and then the following day they break apart, it's like you have a new toy every day. You know, and you don't have the same one all the time.
All right. So we talk about the Play Africa museums, and you're bringing the art of play back into the lives of South Africa. You have currently only one museum.
Yes.
Talk to us about it. Where is it, and what can one hope to see when one visits, but you obviously need to make an appointment before you get there.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. So Play Africa, we only have one. We don't have many around the world, although Gretchen has experienced, seeing museums around the world. And she founded Play Africa in 2012 when she actually went to visit a museum. And since then, she's just been visiting museum after museum.
And I've seen the pictures. They're mind-blowing. They're absolutely awesome.
Yeah. So, we are based now in Constitution Hill. And we encourage schools, families, everybody to come through and see what we have. Obviously, yes, you do need to call us and book.
Is there an admission charge involved?
Yes, that's something that we are actually still discussing right now, because obviously we need to maintain our resources. But we had been operating for free. When we started prototyping the actual museum, we have been rendering the services for free, so that we could actually also learn from it. Because we didn't want to deliver something that we didn't know whether it would work or not work. So now we know that we have a model that actually works.
But you are non-profit, are you not?
Yes, we are. We are non-profit. So the fee, obviously, it would also depend on the programming that you require and that information you'd get when you make your booking. But,
and I'm sure if there are those really impoverished schools that really would benefit from coming to you, you would waive the fee.
Absolutely.
All right.
Yes.
What can one hope to experience, and how much time do you need to spend at the museum, and what's that experience going to be like?
Usually our programming, if you come in for 1.5 hours, that's the time that we usually give, especially, given the children's attention span. It's 1.5 hours, and this includes a lot of activities that you can do around maybe a specific, let's say like the farm to market that I was talking about, it's a specific program, but then there are other exhibits around it that we do. So for example, we have the farm to market, and the children there also learning a skill, mathematics, because they plant. They're learning life skills. They go and plant at the farm, and then they have to take the fruit of vegetables to the market, and then they have to go and sell them. So that's also a skill.
That's all part of the activity.
Part of the activities. And then there's an art section where we, have fruits and vegetables, and they can draw them and color them. And so that's the artistic part, the creative arts, and the mathematical side of it. Form of expression, the mathematical side, and engineering. With engineering, we encourage them to build their own farms, and they use Duplo. They use what we have, what we call magnetiles, which are a very fantastic tool for mathematics as well. They use magnetiles to build that. They do fruit and vegetable painting. So we'll cut off the tops, the very tops of a vegetable, so they could see what it looks like, and then they do pictures with that. And there's reading as well involved. So we'll get books that are themed according to what we are showing them at the moment, and then and kids do love reading.
So since 2012, how many schools or communities have you targeted, and what do you believe they've gained from interacting with you as Play Africa?
Wow, we've gone to so many places, from Alexandra to Soweto to Orange Farm. We've done so many things, but our biggest year was last year, when we actually served 4,500 children in total, which is not easy, with the space that we have. But Constitution Hill has been such a great home for us, because they let us occupy the courtyards that we have, the Mandela Courtyard, the Joe Slovo Courtyard, and we turn these blank canvases into these amazing spaces. And if you visit our website, you've seen the pictures that we have.
Amazing.
And if you visit our website as well, you'll see, what we are capable of doing. And, and even if maybe you find yourself at Constitution Hill, pop in and just ask and see, and then we can show you around all the things that we do.
How can we as a community make a difference to Play Africa?
As a community, and especially the corporate community, can donate to causes like Play Africa, because the work that we do is so important. Because if you get a child at an early age and you build them up whilst they're younger, it's amazing the results you're going to get later.
Paul, the interaction with that child or that school or that nursery school and Play Africa is an hour and a half only. Yeah. Am I right?
Yes.
How do you believe, what is it that you're doing right that is making such a great impact on that child or that family in just a mere hour and a half?
I think what we do right is we listen and we put the child first. So most of what we do, we're not an instructional kind of an environment, but we follow what the child leads the play for us, and we follow, and we're also learning at the same time. So, just that engagement of an hour and a half. Obviously, children's concentration spans sometimes
Is there follow-up? So let's assume you went at the beginning of last year to a particular school.
Yeah.
Is that just a once-off and then it's over, or do you go do you go multiple times, or you try and make at least 3 or 4 visits back to that school just to further enhance the child's experience?
So some programs we've taken to schools, and then we've encouraged the schools to come to us as well. So we do have that relationship. We have a very good relationship with a lot of schools. So there are certain programs that we'll probably take to the school, like our planetarium, for instance, where it requires quite a high volume and a big space, and we'll use the school hall because we don't have the facility, the capacity to do it, especially during the week. So we'll take it to the school, but then other programming, maybe the teacher of that particular class or grade, they want to do something with their class, then they decide, okay, no, we'll go to Play Africa, which is how we impact schools, and we keep following up with them, and they also come back to us. And even when we have like smaller events that are not necessarily targeted mainly for schools, but just generally, you'll find that children from certain schools, they'll come and say, hey, I'm here today, which is quite fantastic, because then that shows that the work that we do is quite important and beneficial for them.
Are you guys open to ideas and suggestions and donations? Where, for example, a corporate comes in and says, I want to make a donation, but it's not monetary. I want to donate this type of equipment because we believe it's going to enhance the children's learning. Are you guys open to all of that?
Yes, we're open to all of that. And, obviously we'll have to look at what it is and whether it does serve the purpose.
True.
And obviously keep with the eye of the prize of what it is that we are aiming to achieve. We are very welcome to donations and suggestions. As I said to you earlier, that we're also learning on this journey. And, we can't say, no, we know it all and be stagnant in everything that we do. So, yes, we do welcome that. And
people who have amazing ideas, they can spend an hour with,
yes,
or half an hour when you're going around to different schools, and they can give of their time, storytelling, yes, or whatever the case may
yes,
be. You welcome all of that.
We welcome all of that. That's we do have a volunteer program that we run. So if you'd like to volunteer for Play Africa, you can go onto our website and you can click there. It tells
and that's where we live. It sounds
volunteer.
Like lots of fun. And
yeah,
I think perhaps one of the weekends or with the school holidays, when you're out
yeah,
of ideas of what to do to keep the kids busy and occupied and interested and engaged, maybe you want to go to Play Africa's website, see what they're all about, and perhaps take the kids for an outing there. I think not only will the children have a wonderful experience, you too will have a great experience, and you will bond a little more with your little darlings. That brings us to the end of the show. A very big thank you to the production team. Till the next time, as always, thank you for being a part of the show. I loved having you here, and it is Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi and Khudafiz from me, Julie Alli.
Ya hala, 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 حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا، حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا، يا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا، يا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا، يا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا، يا